It started with a song, quiet at first, then echoing through every corner of Nashville like a memory that refused to stay buried. Miranda Lambert's newest release wasn't just another heartbreak ballad. It felt like a confession wrapped in melody, a letter never sent, whispered instead through chords and verses. And within hours of its debut, fans were convinced they knew exactly who it was about. Because when Miranda sang of a cowboy who left her for brighter lights, the internet lit up with one name, Blake Shelton. Nearly a decade has passed since their fairy tale marriage ended, but somehow the wounds still seem to hum beneath every lyric she writes. The song wasn't loud or bitter. It was haunting, fragile yet fierce, the kind of track that feels too personal to be fiction. And as listeners began to pick apart each line, theories spread like wildfire. Was Miranda finally breaking her silence after all these years? Or was this something deeper? A story she had been waiting to tell, hidden beneath her calm smiles and glittering career. Whatever the truth, one thing became clear. Miranda Lambert had reopened a chapter everyone thought was closed, and in doing so, she didn't just shake country music. She reminded the world that sometimes the past never truly lets go. When Miranda Lambert released her latest song, it didn't just arrive and it landed like a storm. At first, it seemed like any other country single. A gentle guitar, a touch of steel strings, and that unmistakable ache in her voice that always sounds like it's carrying a secret. But as soon as the lyrics hit, something shifted. Fans knew this wasn't just a song. It was a story. She sang of whiskey-soaked promises that faded with the morning light, and a ring left cold in a box I never thought I'd close. The words were soft, but the message, cutting. Listeners felt like they'd been handed pages from a diary she never meant to share. Within hours, social media lit up with speculation. TikTok creators dissected every line. Twitter threads grew into emotional debates. Country fans, gossip bloggers, and even casual listeners all agreed on one thing. Miranda's song sounded like it came straight from the heart. A heart that still remembered Blake Shelton. It wasn't the first time she'd turned her pain into poetry. But this time the timing felt deliberate. Blake had just stepped back from The Voice to focus on family life with Gwen Stefani. And suddenly here was Miranda, dropping a track that echoed everything fans thought she'd long buried. Critics called the song hauntingly autobiographical. Rolling Stone described it as a slow burn of confession disguised as a country classic. But others went further, claiming Miranda had done something even braver, or perhaps riskier. She'd reopened her past in full view of the world, reminding everyone that heartbreak doesn't have an expiration date, and whether by fate or by strategy, Nashville was once again buzzing with the name Miranda Lambert. Her song wasn't just being streamed, it was being studied. Every line, every pause, every breath. But what made the track even more powerful was what lay underneath, the layers of meaning that couldn't be ignored. Because behind those poetic metaphors and smoky vocals, there were whispers of something much more personal, and fans were starting to notice. Long before the heartbreak and speculation, Miranda Lambert and Blake Shelton were the crown jewels of country music's golden age. They met in the mid-2000s when both were rising stars. Miranda, the fiery Texas girl with a guitar full of truth, and Blake, the Oklahoma charmer whose smile could melt an arena. When their paths crossed, it felt like a perfect duet written by destiny itself. By the time they married in 2011, Nashville treated them like royalty. They were the power couple that made every award show sparkle, laughing on red carpets, harmonizing on stage, and painting the picture of what fans believed was a forever kind of love. But behind the curtain, the melody began to slip off key. Blake's career was shifting into overdrive. The Voice turned him into a national household name and pulled him into Hollywood's neon glow. Miranda, meanwhile, clung fiercely to her roots. The grit, the songwriting, the long roads between small-town venues. The more he embraced the spotlight, the more she retreated to the music that kept her grounded. Rumors began to swirl, about distance, about differences, about lives that were quietly growing apart. And then, in 2015, the fairy tale ended with a single sentence in the press. Miranda Lambert and Blake Shelton have divorced. No drama, no details, just silence. But for their fans, it felt like the heartbreak of the decade. Both artists moved forward in opposite directions. Blake found love again with pop icon Gwen Stefani, crafting a story that blended two worlds, country and California glamour. Miranda, ever private yet unbreakable, poured her soul into her music, crafting albums that sounded like late-night confessions set to guitar strings. Still, their story refused to fade. Every time Miranda released a song tinged with sorrow, listeners heard Blake's shadow between the notes. And when Blake sang about peace and home, fans wondered if he was answering her in his own quiet way. Nearly 10 years later, one new song has brought it all rushing back. The laughter, the tears, the silence that followed. Because even when love ends, its echoes never quite disappear. And Miranda's newest lyrics prove that some echoes can still shake the walls of Nashville. To understand why this song struck such a nerve, you have to listen closely, not just to the melody but to the whispers buried beneath it. Miranda Lambert has always written like a poet in disguise. Every word she sings carries layers, part truth, part metaphor, part confession. But this time, the metaphors cut too close to her past to ignore. Fans caught on immediately. Lines like "a cowboy left me for brighter lights," "but the moon don't shine in neon skies" were impossible to separate from Blake Shelton's life in Los Angeles. Another verse, "I kept the vows in a box, but you burned yours down with whiskey lies," left listeners stunned. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was a story, told through barbed poetry. Within hours of the song's release, Twitter and TikTok became digital detective boards. Clips of live performances were slowed down, lyrics were analyzed frame by frame, and thousands of fans debated what each word might mean. Some called it Miranda's emotional closure. Others thought it was a warning shot, a musical letter that Blake and Gwen couldn't ignore. But what made the song so powerful wasn't the gossip. It was the emotion that bled through. You could hear the ache in her voice, the kind that doesn't come from rehearsed heartbreak, but from memories that still sting when spoken out loud. It wasn't bitterness, and it was something softer, sadder. The sound of someone who's finally ready to say what she never could before. And while critics debated whether it was a personal confession or a masterful piece of storytelling, one thing became clear: Miranda knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't need to name names. The emotion did that for her. Because behind every coded lyric, there's a truth she's never denied. Miranda Lambert doesn't just write songs. She leaves trails. And this new release felt like a trail leading straight back to a love story the world thought was long buried. But what if there's more to this than just heartbreak? What if this song wasn't just about emotion, but also about power, timing, and reclaiming her place in the spotlight? At first glance, Miranda's new song felt like a tear-stained diary entry, raw, nostalgic, deeply personal. But beneath the emotion, something sharper was at play, because if there's one thing Miranda Lambert has learned after decades in the industry, it's that timing is everything. She didn't just drop this song randomly. It came at a moment when Blake Shelton and Gwen Stefani were making headlines again, appearing on talk shows, posting romantic duets, even teasing a new collaboration. Country music's favorite ex-couple was back in the news, and Miranda's release landed like thunder in the middle of their sunshine. Fans couldn't help but notice the coincidence. Was this fate, or a carefully crafted statement? Because while Blake and Gwen's media machine painted a perfect picture of love and unity, Miranda's song brought the cracks back into focus. She didn't need interviews, gossip, or staged smiles. Just a melody and a memory. Industry insiders began to speculate that the timing wasn't accidental. Releasing a song with such emotional resonance right when her ex-husband's name was trending again was more than smart. It was powerful. It reminded the world that she wasn't just the one he left behind. She was the storyteller, and in country music, that means she controls the narrative. And it worked. Within days, streaming numbers spiked. Old videos of Miranda and Blake resurfaced, drawing millions of views. Hashtags like #9teammiranda and Cowboy Confessions trended across TikTok. Suddenly, the heartbreak that once defined her became her greatest weapon. A story only she could tell and one everyone wanted to hear. But what truly made this move brilliant wasn't revenge. It was restraint. Miranda never pointed fingers, never used names, never even hinted too directly. She let the audience do the talking. And in doing so, she reminded everyone that silence, and when used wisely, can be louder than any lyric. Yet for all the speculation and praise, one question lingered in fans' minds. Was Miranda simply reclaiming her voice, or was she hinting that something between her and Blake had never truly ended? For years, the world believed that Miranda Lambert and Blake Shelton had moved on. Two stars walking separate paths, their love story fading into Nashville legend. But this new song changed that belief overnight, because in every lyric there was something that didn't sound like closure. It sounded like remembrance, like a conversation still happening through music, even if neither of them would ever admit it. Miranda has always said that songwriting is her therapy, a way to say the things she can't in interviews. And this track felt like a message wrapped in melody, sent to someone who'd know exactly what it meant. Lines like, "You said goodbye but the echoes stayed," carried the kind of honesty that comes only from lived experience. Meanwhile, Blake's silence spoke volumes. He didn't comment, didn't post, didn't like or share a thing. But fans noticed that just days after the song's release, he performed an older track during a live show, one he'd written during their marriage, and the timing sent the internet spiraling. To some, it was coincidence. To others, it was a quiet response. Two artists speaking the only way they know how, through songs, and that's what keeps their story so magnetic. Unlike most celebrity breakups, Miranda and Blake never traded public insults or messy interviews. Their silence became the mystery. Every time one releases new music, the other's name trends again, as if the universe keeps pulling their stories back together, note by note. What makes it even more powerful is that neither has truly rewritten their shared history. They both still perform songs from their time together, as if those melodies are too sacred to bury. It's like their love story didn't end. It simply transformed into art. And that's the thing about people like Miranda and Blake. When two songwriters fall in love, their story never really fades. It just keeps finding its way back into the music, long after the world has moved on. But if Miranda's song stirred up emotions from the past, it also set the stage for something else, something few saw coming. Because just as the conversation reached its peak, whispers began to spread that another surprise was on the horizon. The moment Miranda's song hit streaming platforms, the internet went into overdrive. Fans, bloggers, and media outlets began piecing together theories, each one more elaborate than the last. What started as a simple music release quickly spiraled into one of the biggest talking points in country music this year. Rumors suggested that Miranda wasn't done, that this song was only the beginning of a larger story she was preparing to tell. Some even claimed that the track was the first single from a secret album, one allegedly inspired by the years she spent rebuilding her life after the split. Others swore they'd heard clues hidden in her live performances, subtle glances and lyrical changes that hinted at unresolved emotions. And then, the whispers turned toward Blake. Online forums lit up with speculation that he had been caught off guard by the song, that he never expected Miranda to revisit that chapter. A few unverified reports even claimed that Gwen Stefani wasn't thrilled about the renewed attention on her husband's past, especially as fans began comparing the two women once again. Of course, none of these rumors have been confirmed. Miranda hasn't addressed the theories, and Blake has remained silent, perhaps the wisest move of all. But silence, in the world of celebrity storytelling, only fuels more questions. Social media became a battlefield of opinions. Some defended Miranda's right to express her emotions through music, calling it art, not shade. Others saw it as a deliberate move to stir the past. But no matter what side people chose, everyone agreed on one thing. The song hit harder than anyone expected, and that's where Miranda's true brilliance shines. She didn't have to name names or explain her feelings in interviews. She just sang, and let the world connect the dots for her. As rumors continue to swirl about hidden meanings and possible responses, one truth remains clear. Miranda Lambert knows how to control a story without ever saying a word. And this time she didn't just release a song, she reignited a legend. But the question everyone's asking now is, what's next? Because if this track was just the beginning, then Miranda might be preparing for the biggest chapter of her career yet. For Miranda Lambert, this song wasn't just another entry in her discography. It was a moment of reclamation. Over the years, the headlines surrounding her breakup with Blake Shelton had often painted her as the heartbroken one, the woman left behind while he rebuilt his life in the spotlight. But with this release, Miranda flipped that narrative on its head. She didn't come back to cry about the past. She came back to own it. Every lyric, every chord, every raw emotion reminded fans that Miranda was never the victim. She was the voice. The artist who turned heartbreak into art, pain into poetry, and silence into strength. What's remarkable is how naturally she did it. No loud promotions, no scandal-driven interviews, just a song that spoke for itself. That quiet confidence struck a chord far beyond country music. Younger artists began calling her an influence again. Critics praised her authenticity in a time when the genre is often accused of sounding overproduced and predictable. Even those who once sided with Blake found themselves revisiting Miranda's old tracks, realizing how much of her story had always been hidden between the lines. She wasn't rewriting history. She was reminding everyone she'd written it in the first place. And in a way, this release marked the full circle of her journey. The same woman who once sang of heartbreak in small-town bars was now standing at the center of a global conversation. Not because she courted drama, but because she never lost her truth. Miranda Lambert has always been more than a voice. She's a storyteller, a survivor, and a master of emotional timing. And with this new song, she didn't just reopen an old chapter. She reclaimed her legacy, proving that sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't anger or gossip. It's peace. And Miranda's peace sounds like music. In the end, Miranda Lambert's newest song is far more than a nostalgic reflection. It's a reminder of how deeply music can mirror the human soul. It's not about rekindling old drama or reopening wounds. It's about honesty, the kind of truth that doesn't fade no matter how many years or marriages come between it and the present. Through her lyrics, Miranda showed that healing isn't always silent. Sometimes it sings, and for those who have followed her journey from heartbreak to self-discovery, this song feels like the moment where everything comes full circle. Whether she meant to speak to Blake Shelton directly, or whether the echoes of their past simply refused to stay buried, one thing is clear. Miranda Lambert remains fearless in her art. She's unafraid to show her scars, because she knows they're the proof of her survival. And maybe that's what makes her so timeless. In a world obsessed with gossip and glitter, Miranda still chooses truth and storytelling. Her music doesn't just entertain, it confides, it confronts, and it heals. So as the final notes fade and the headlines begin to cool, one truth stands taller than the rumors. Miranda Lambert has turned her heartbreak into history, her pain into poetry, and her silence into song, because sometimes the loudest statement isn't an interview or a tweet. It's a melody that refuses to die.